Phu Thao Media Ven, welcome to a storm-forged journey of defiance and ambition. On the Thung Min continent, where the seven great merchant alliances control the lifeblood of commerce, and power undercurrents are rising on the eve of the heavenly martial assembly. Once a pillar among the seven, Than Van Pavilion now wavers under internal strife and mounting pressure from hostile takeovers. Upon the shoulders of its young heiress Tun Huoc Lee rests the heavy burden of protecting her family amid a ruthless vortex of power. At her side stands Dia Pan Fong, a young prodigy born with a lightning vein physique, a man willing to wager his life in exchange for strength. When news breaks that Minangok Tower is forging a marriage alliance with the Huantin sword sect, the balance of power shifts instantly. The young sect master, Trio Vo Kuk, emerges with ambitions to overturn the merchant alliance at the coming assembly. In the darkness before the storm, Han Fong chooses the most perilous path to defy the heavens and draw down lightning tribulation upon himself, tempering his body and will in the fury of thunder. For he knows that without greater power, not only will Than Van Pavilion fall, but his promise to Huoc Lee will turn to ashes. The storm is gathering, and beneath a sky ablaze with lightning, a legend is about to begin. As the undercurrents of power begin to surge across the Thring Min continent, Than Van Pavilion becomes the center of every watchful eye. Internal factions fracture, elders refuse to submit, and rival merchant alliances wait patiently for the chance to devour it whole. At the heart of this maelstrom stands Tun Huoc Lee, a young heiress forced to grow up far too soon. She has no luxury of weakness. Every decision she makes carries the life-or-death weight of hundreds who depend on the markets under her command. By day, Huoc Lee is a cold and razor-sharp master of negotiation. By night, she is simply a weary young woman crushed beneath the burden of inheritance. The upcoming Heavenly Martial Assembly is not merely a tournament, it is Than Van Pavilion's only chance to preserve its standing among the seven great merchant alliances. Dia Pan Fong sees all of this. He understands that if the assembly ends in failure, Than Van Pavilion will be forced into annexation, and Huoc Lee will become a political pawn in yet another marriage alliance. His promise, therefore, is no empty comfort. He will step into the Heavenly Martial Assembly, not only to prove the power of his lightning vein physique, but to win back her right to choose her own fate. Between ambition and affection, between power and freedom, Han Fong's resolve has taken shape. And this is only the beginning of a true defiance against the heavens. But just as Dia Pan Fong was quietly preparing for the Heavenly Martial Assembly, news like thunder from a clear sky struck the Thring Min continent. Minangok Tower announced a marriage alliance with the Huantin sword sect. Lung Tuet Dao, the embodiment of power and beauty within Minangok Tower, was to be betrothed to Trio Vo Kuk, the young sect master of the sword sect. On the surface, it was a perfectly matched union between two prestigious powers. But to those who understood the game, it was a calculated strategic move. Once the sword sect gained legitimate grounds to participate in the Merchant Alliance Assembly, the balance of power would shift completely. The news reached Than Van Pavilion like a blade to the heart. If Trio Vo Kuk were to claim first place at the Heavenly Martial Assembly, the sword sect would have every justification to intervene deeply in the affairs of the seven great merchant alliances, and Than Van Pavilion, already weakened, would be the first target. Within the council chamber, the elders began to waver. Some proposed concessions. Others suggested forging alliances to preserve themselves. Tun Huoc Lee listened in silence, her gaze growing colder by the second. She understood that from this moment on, the assembly was no longer merely an opportunity, it was a battlefield of life and death. As for Dia Pan Fong, when he heard the name Trio Vo Kuk, a faint spark of lightning flickered in his eyes. The opponent had revealed himself, and their clash was inevitable. Under the mounting pressure of the marriage alliance and the name Trio Vo Kuk, echoing ever louder across the merchant alliance, Dia Pan Fong understood one thing clearly. A promise alone was not enough. If he wished to enter the Heavenly Martial Assembly as someone capable of changing the tide, he needed power beyond that of an ordinary genius. The opportunity came in the midst of danger. The chief artificing elder of Than Van Pavilion made a desperate gamble, forcefully attempting to forge a pair of 9th-grade Saint swords as a trump card for the assembly. But ambition spiraled beyond control. The spirit array trembled violently, the flames fell out of balance, and the raging sword embryos threatened to tear space itself apart. If the attempt failed, not only would the Saint swords be destroyed, the entire forging chamber would be reduced to rubble. No one dared step forward. Dia Pan Fong walked straight into the howling furnace. The lightning vein within his body erupted his figure, dissolving into radiant arcs of thunder that blanketed the spirit array. Using his own body as a conduit, he stabilized the chaotic flow of spiritual energy, while channeling the Heavenly Heart variant flame to forcibly complete the twin blades formation. At the final moment, the furnace exploded. When the smoke cleared 2 blades, the Frost Shadow twin swords hovered in midair, their cold radiance blinding. And Han Fong collapsed, his body scorched and cracked by lightning. He had saved the swords. But the price he paid had only just begun. The Frost Shadow twin swords had taken form, but Dia Pan Fong understood clearly what he possessed was only the shell of true weapons. Without being tempered by heavenly tribulation, they would never unleash their full might at the heavenly martial assembly. More importantly, after the furnace explosion, cracks had formed within his lightning vein. If he did not reconstruct it with a force even greater than before, his cultivation would remain forever stalled at its current realm. So he made a decision that would leave all who heard of it in shock. 3 nights before the assembly, Han Fong quietly left the city and ventured into the northern wastelands. There he personally set up an ancient thunder-converging array, placing the twin swords at its center and positioning himself as the core of the formation. The moment the final seal descended, the sky began to change. Dark clouds churned. Lightning gathered into a sea. He did not wait for the heavenly tribulation to fall. He provoked it. The first bolt crashed down, splitting the earth apart. Han Fong activated his lightning shadow manifestation, forcibly drawing the thunder into his body. He used the tribulation to temper the swords, temper his flesh, and reconstruct his lightning vein. His body burned, his blood essence evaporated, and his consciousness teetered on the brink of collapse again and again. Amid the ocean of thunder, he held on to a single conviction: if he wished to stand before Tribulation, he would first have to surpass heaven and earth themselves. When the storm clouds finally dispersed, the wasteland lay scorched and blackened. Han Fong was still standing, but the aura surrounding him had completely transformed. The thunderclouds had only just dispersed. Smoke still rose from the scorched wasteland. Han Fong had not even withdrawn his aura when a razor-sharp surge of sword intent tore through the air toward him. Tribulation had arrived. The young sect master of the Huyen Tian sword sect stood suspended in the sky, white robes fluttering. Behind him stood 4 female guards, each emanating the aura of a martial venerable. His gaze swept across the blackened earth before settling on the frost-shadowed twin swords, which still crackled faintly with residual lightning. 9th grade heavenly tribulation. Interesting, Tribulation said with a faint smile. The owner of those blades must have perished. His eyes lowered to Han Fong. Clothes in tatters. Aura only just stabilized after a breakthrough, and he naturally assumed he was merely a lucky survivor. The desire to claim the swords had already surfaced in his gaze. One of the guards descended first, her blade flashing coldly. Present the swords and kneel to atone. Perhaps my lord will leave your corpse intact. Han Fong did not reply. Only a streak of lightning quietly slid across his pupils. In the next instant, his figure vanished. A sharp crack echoed through the sky. Tribulation's face snapped to the side as he staggered half a step back, shock rippling through his body. The 4 guards froze, none having reacted in time. Beneath the sky that had just endured heavenly tribulation, Han Fong stood tall, arcs of lightning still coiling around his wrist. You want the swords, he said calmly. Then let's see whether you're qualified. The heavenly martial assembly had yet to begin. But the first battle had officially begun. The resounding slap that echoed through the sky was not merely an insult to Tribulation, it was a bell tolling the dawn of a new order. The scorched wasteland still carried the acrid scent of heavenly tribulation. The lightning around Han Fong gradually subsided, yet his presence was no longer the same. From that moment on, the struggle at the heavenly martial assembly ceased to be a showcase of factions. It had become an inevitable clash between 2 unrivaled geniuses. Tribulation clenched his fists, the arrogance in his eyes hardening into icy resolve. He understood now that the man before him was no lucky survivor, but the greatest variable in this game, and Han Fong knew as well that the slap had only ignited the true storm to come. In the distance, the Thung Min continent awaited the opening day. Merchant alliances maneuvered in silence, their trump cards gradually revealed. Amid power, ambition, and his promise to protect Tun Nuc Li Han, Fong had stepped onto a path with no return. The heavenly martial assembly is about to begin. Who will stand at the summit? Who will be cast aside? Fu Thao Media Ven bids you farewell for now. Don't forget to drop an 8 if you believe Han Fong will defy the heavens and prevail. See you in the next video where the great battle officially erupts.